you very much. Thank you. Obrigado. Super happy to be here. It's Friday, 4 p.m. We are still here. That's amazing. It's been an amazing 3 days. I stopped doing web development many years ago, so to be back to my roots with Django people and showing off what I've been doing on the data world. Since I left the web development, I joined Google. I was Katie's teammate. I spoke around the world about BigQuery, and 2 years later, I left Google and I became a developer advocate for Snowflake, which is a real company, not an insult. And yeah, the question I asked myself a couple months ago here in the data world is, why would anyone use Snowflake as a backend for Django? And we're going to review this. I'm glad that the next talk here will be about getting corporate sponsorship for open source development, because that's part of this story. So it's not only Friday at 4 p.m. Later, there's more to go deeper into this. When I was thinking about the audience here, I'm thinking about 3 different audiences as a developer advocate. One, it's you, DjangoCon. I want to introduce you to Snowflake that you can use for big data projects. But also I want your feedback. I want you to help me improve this presentation and my talking points when I talk to Snowflake customers, because there's a lot of Snowflake customers that want Snowflake and Django. I want to tell the story to other Snowflake customers. And at the same time, my audience are Snowflake employees. As a developer advocate, I work inside the company, and I have to convince some people that Django is still super cool, it's still super interesting, and that Snowflake, the company, should sponsor more open source development. So to start with, my initial question is, why would people want to combine Django and Snowflake? Django is famously known as a project to build websites, OLTP, as we all call it on the database world, transactional. And Snowflake is a database built for data analytics, OLAP. Let's analyze a lot of data. Let's not have any indexes. Let's just allow people to analyze a lot of data. And these 2 worlds, in my mind, a couple of months ago, don't mix very well. And I'm going to use some people's reactions as the own reactions I had a couple of months ago, because yes, transactional data and data for analyzing are 2 different worlds. Django supports, Postgres, MariaDB, MySQL, Oracle, SQLite. Those are the standard databases. These are not analytical databases. So when I went to Twitter and I talked back in February about Snowflake as a backend for Django, Ben's standstill reply was, because you can. Like, it's not really something you should do. And other people talked about data gravity. All your data is in Snowflake. So let's use Snowflake at Django because the data is there. And people are like, meh, I don't know about that. In this day and age, it's super easy to move data around. Reverse ETL, you get your data into your Postgres, out of Snowflake into Postgres, etc. Again, Ben is like, this feels more like experimentation, someone just pushing the edges, this is not meaningful, smart people do stupid stuff. And this is the part of the talk when I tell the not Django audiences what Django is. So these are I go to Wikipedia, I tell people that don't know that Django is a web framework, that it has been powering Instagram since 2011. It was powering Clubhouse while Clubhouse was alive. And what you might not know much is about Snowflake, which is a database in the cloud, software as a service, nothing to install. You just pay for what you use. It's built to analyze data, and it's built from scratch for the cloud. And that made it different than many other things that started as a database not in the cloud, and then, like for example, you might know Redshift. Redshift is like a fork of Postgres, and then they made a cloud service out of it, but it's not cloud native. Snowflake has been built for many workloads: data engineering, data lake, data warehouse, data science, data applications, data sharing. I was at a previous conference where I gave this talk the last time, and someone at the booth was like, hey, we already tried Redshift as a backend for Django. It didn't work. So people have been trying this combination of OLAP on OLTP. It doesn't work. And this is something important on the Snowflake architecture, how it works, how it's built for the cloud. On the first layer, you have the database storage that we use cloud storage, Google Cloud Storage or S3, and basically that's infinite. And then you have virtual warehouses that can query that data in parallel. So you can have one virtual warehouse dedicated to all your analysts, and you can have a virtual warehouse dedicated just to Django. And in that way, you can split workloads, and you can scale, and you, instead of thinking about sharding, you just create more compute units for dedicated workloads. So you don't have the problem of, if you put everything together in one database, then things stop working. No, you just ask for more compute power, it works. And yes, Ben is still fighting with me because, yeah, apps need tons of transactional queries versus few batch ones. Apps read and write. Apps have lots of consistency and concurrency issues. This will not work. And in case you don't know Ben, he's the chief analytics officer and the founder of Mode. So he understands data. And this is how I used to think too. On the other side, who wants Snowflake as a backend for Django? I'm going to talk about Scott Fott. He's the lead product manager, data science and engineering for a company. I cannot say the name. He didn't give me permission, but he gave me permission to say that it's a big entertainment company with theme parks in Orlando and in Paris and in other places. You figure out. Ben Ryan, I don't know who knows Tim Graham. He says hi. I'm going to talk about him too. And thousands of people around the world want this. When I say thousands, just go to Stack Overflow. Django to Snowflake connection running on queries. From 4 years ago, 2,000 views. Similar question from 2 years and 10 months ago, 3,000 views. People are asking this question. It might be a silly question, but they are asking it. And people started creating these connectors. Smooth created published a read-only database backend for Django. Ben Ryan, he also created one. He wrote 0 docs for it. But there is a package ready to be installed. And this one, since March this year, had more than 1,000 installs. And then Scott Fott from this big corporation came to the Django mailing list, and he's like, we wrote this Snowflake DB backend at this mouse corporation, and they wanted to release it. They never released it, but he started that conversation back in January 2021. And that's when Tim Graham replies, and he's like, hey, I wrote the backend for Cockroach. I wrote the backend for Cloud Spanner. Maybe I can do something here. This is when he's offering to develop something in exchange for money. That's corporate-sponsored open source that I love. If you don't know Tim, he was a Django fellow from 2014 to 2019. Cockroach sponsored him to build the Django adapter. He also Google did, and he does a lot of open source work sponsored by corporations. And yeah, he comes back December 2021. He released it. It's great. A company called Cedar Team created the connector, and we are all very happy because someone that really understands Django created it. It's open. These are his notes, how he developed the backend. And finally, we have this on GitHub available for everyone. And since March, it has at least 5,000 installs, which means people want it, people are using it, we have corporations paying for its development, we have Tim Graham developing it. It makes sense. This is just to give you a little data in context. In the last month, Snowflake had 1,000 installs, while the most popular third-party connector that I found is SQL Server, also Cockroach, Redshift, there's a lot of people using it, Yugabyte, Spanner that Tim also created, and TDB has very few, but you can see that there is demand there. And of course, Tim, while working on this, he made fixes for the Snowflake connector, which is another cool thing about open source. I'm not how I'm doing on time, because I have a demo, but it probably doesn't make sense to show you this demo. I'll just show you the screenshots. You know Django. One factor here is that team created it for Django 3.2. We are still waiting for someone to sponsor the 4.0 version. And I'm waiting. I really want to say Snowflake is sponsoring it, but these are the challenges when developing open source. Snowflake wants to sponsor it, but getting the money out, working through the machine is always a little harder. But hopefully I can announce that soon. But yes, for people that don't know Django, you start a project. On the Snowflake side, you create a user, a database. Of course, you should do this with Terraform, really, but I'm showing you the basics. Then the connection configuration, and then you have Django working. You can run the first migrations, and it's all working, and it's cool. And you can start creating your own apps. These are the tables on the Snowflake side. And then I made my first example with the Stack Overflow. I have a whole copy of Stack Overflow, all the questions, all the answers, and I wanted to create an app to show it off, working at that scale without indexes, and it works. So I created my 3 tables, answers, questions, and the tag of each question. And this is what I love about Django, the ORM, just having managed false databases, having the ability to define foreign keys, and then the ORM making my life super easy while I'm developing a web app. And it works. This is a view. This is a template. You all know that part, but I love your feedback on how I introduce this to other people that are not familiar, and I can show them the power of using Django with Snowflake, and it runs. You have the server. It's working. This is my simple example. These are the queries running on Snowflake. So, for example, looking at all the questions for Stack Overflow with those filterings takes 3 seconds, answers, It works. And it took me no time to get this working. I didn't have to think about indexes. I can have a data app in a very short time. And these are, OK, the queries running. And this is where I want to show you a little bit of the source code, the notes that team wrote while developing this. So, of course, when creating a new connector, there are the connections of the conventions of Snowflake, the surprise that Snowflake doesn't support indexes. JSON field is not supported, not because Snowflake doesn't support JSON. There is a variant type, but again, there's part of the development challenges of how do we adapt the variant to JSON. And Snowflake doesn't check constraints. It's built for big data. It's not built for transactional. And of course, how do we deal with subqueries? Little issues and limitations that he had to deal with. So going back to the question, why would anyone use Snowflake as a backend for Django? Scott has the best answer. Yes, maybe Snowflake is not as fast as Postgres and Maria when doing transactional work, but if you are working with big data, and if you want to work with Django, sometimes the best answer is Snowflake. This is my favorite quote. He was put on a project that used Django and Postgres, and they had jobs that were failing because Postgres wasn't performant enough. They tried to make Postgres faster, let's get a bigger machine, but the performance wasn't there because it didn't scale queries. They did the proof of concept, they deleted the Postgres database, they moved everything to Snowflake. All the data was already in Snowflake, so they didn't need to move it anymore, and things went way faster. And this is the real value. Sometimes we super optimize things, like by creating copies, going to Postgres, and sometimes it's like, no, just leave it in Snowflake with big data. It might scale way more. And this is the part where I want to show you a little bit about the future of data apps. How is Snowflake thinking of how these things are evolving? Because Snowflake is doing big investments in this part that can have a lot of consequences, nice things that can come when we try to merge Snowflake and Django. One is, I don't know how many people know Streamlit. It's another Python web framework which works with components. And it's pretty magic how it does things. And Snowflake bought this open source Python project like for $800 million. And it's a way of showing the commitment that Snowflake has to, we want to work with the open source community, we want to work with the Python community, we want people to build data apps and facilitate this. I wrote a quick demo of working with Streamlit. This, I don't know, I could run it for you now, but just to show you what's happening here, I have 3 selectors to look at Stack Overflow tags. You can choose a tag, you can choose what you want to see, you can choose other tags you want to compare with. And it's super easy to just write these data apps. You say, you get the data from SQL, you write a SQL query, you get the data out, and then you just ask for the component. Show this as a table, show this as a selector, give me the result, and with no views, no templates, you just get like an interactive web app, which is pretty magic, but it's different than Django. And part of my work now at Snowflake are people asking me, why should we work with Django if we have Streamlit already? Streamlit has all this magic. Well, with Django, you have less magic. You need to develop more of your templates and views. You have way more flexibility and power and a huge community of people that are very expert on Django. And there is space for both worlds, and there's also space to combine both. Another announcement that Snowflake did this year, which is huge, is that there's a new workload for a new way to store data in Snowflake, which is transactional, which has indexes, and you have tables living right next to each other. So all of the problems that I described earlier, that Snowflake would not deal with indexes or with quick transactions, now we're changing that, and we're all building that inside the data warehouse. And basically, the basic element here is the ability to create a hybrid table. And the hybrid table has indexes, it has constraints, and it works way faster when you need to do a lot of updates, inserts, etc. And another great innovation on the Snowflake world is that Snowflake now runs Python inside the data warehouse. That means I can write Python code, Snowflake understands it, I can create Python UDFs that I can use inside my SQL queries, so my tables. I can move a lot of logic inside the Snowflake, and I can use the expertise that Python developers have. So instead of writing everything on the front-end layer, you can move code to the database, you can move logic to the database and write it all on Python. Just as an example here, this is a UDF that calls Prophet, a forecasting library. At first, it looks like a SQL UDF. I'm just saying it's a Python UDF. So the code inside will be in Python. And I want to use Prophet, which is pretty hard to install normally when you try to install it by yourself. But Snowflake is providing all of these packages already installed. Anaconda is the one developing all of these, bringing all these packages into Snowflake, which makes my ability to just go and write some Python code and logic pretty cool. And with that, just coming back to Ben, with all these announcements, he looks at this and he basically posts this blog post that says, hey, Snowflake could be on the cusp of changing what a database is, what data apps are, how they get built and sold, and what we can do with both of them. They could be building a platform that stops the industry once more and leads to another explosion of ideas and products. So it's really cool to be able to change Ben's mind and change people's minds of what you could do with Snowflake, with Python, with data apps, enable all of these use cases. Hopefully you can use this in your work. Hopefully this talk has been useful in case you ever need, you have big data problems that Snowflake could solve. If you could end up working in one of these projects, if you could participate in this ecosystem, hopefully I'm able to help. In summary, people want Django and Snowflake. It works well. It's better than many of the alternatives in the right context. I love corporate sponsored open source. Hopefully we get more of that. Hopefully I can soon announce that Snowflake is sponsoring the Django project and the Python Foundation, etc. And yes, just choose the database that meets your requirements best. There's all these new abilities, and if you want to try Snowflake, of course, it's free. There's a free trial, no credit card, so you can go and put all of this together. Thank you very much. I'm Felipe Hoffa. I'm on Twitter. I'm Stack Overflow, Reddit. If you have feedback for me, I love feedback. Thanks a lot. Yay.